Hi guys, and welcome to a dual review of mine of the SOFTEARS Studio 4 and of the HIBY Crystal 6. The reason why I'm putting these two together is very simple. They belong to a group of IEMs which are tuned in a more neutral manner, and I thought it would just be interesting to put the two of them together, not so much as to choose a winner, which is the best option, but to show two IEMs which are tuned in a more neutral fashion. Uh, and then, with their, obviously with their particular nuances, and then compare them to or do a slight comparison with two other IEMs which are also tuned in that more neutral fashion, but again with their own specific nuances. Anyway, Studio 4 from SOFTEARS box is as simple as it can possibly be. I mean, there's really nothing to say here. You open it up. When you open it up, you'll see straight away this carrying case, a kind of pelican style case. Inside the actual case, it brings these little two protection bags for the IEMs, which is pretty nice, pretty cool. Basically, the majority of the accessories actually come inside here. All right, and then the rest of the accessories are what? A cleaning cloth, some more tips, the cable, and an extension for that cable. They are okay. I mean, this is anywhere between $429 and $449. Okay, it's fine. I would have liked a few more tips, to be honest. I don't mind the box being simple, but a few more accessories would have been cool. But anyway, this is what it is, and that's that. Okay, so that's the SOFTEARS box. Let's just get it out of the way here, and then the Crystal 6. Crystal 6, this is the MK2 version. There's been a MK1 which I've never heard, so I can't talk about it. Again, you open it up, and inside it brings these little two pouches again for the IEMs themselves, and then one of the plugs, because the cable is modular, some paperwork, a little thank you card, and underneath there the tips, which are the crisp tips, the balanced tips, and the base tips. Out of all of these tips, I only used or I only think the ones that make sense are the base tips, but I'll get into the tips just now, although then I ultimately ended up using my KB Euro 7s. I just like them, that's it. So they work fine, they sound fine, that's it. Okay, so let's put this out of the way. The HIBY, in terms of price, costs anywhere between $349 and $369. I believe now it's a little bit lower, $349, because there's some special discount that they're giving. So again, I mean, for a 6BA, the Studio 4 is a 4BA. Look, they are within reason of what it's on offer and the overall quality. Okay, what other two what other two IEMs do I then have here for us? I've got the Olivetti 0400, which is an older IEM, but I also thought it makes sense to bring it here. And I've got, of course, the SOFTEARS RSV. As for the actual Studio 4 and the HIBY, let's get more into it and talk in a little bit more detail. I'm not using the stock cable, as you can see. I'm using an IVipQ cable. I'll link it afterwards in the description. The shells are, again, very simple, generic looking, very simple looking. I mean, this is as low profile as you can possibly imagine. No fancy design on the faceplate, just a simple SOFTEARS on the right side, a Studio 4 on the left. They fit beautifully, got a nice length in the nozzle. I'm actually using the stock tips here because they actually function really well, so no need to change. And I mean, they, decent weight. I believe the BAs inside are a mix of Knowles and Sonyan, but please don't quote me on that. I believe that it's what it is, the same thing as on the RSV. And look, ergonomic, in terms of its ergonomics, physical aspect, it's fine. It's there's really nothing I can say. On the packaging, as I mentioned, it's straightforward packaging. Brings the bare essentials, and that's that. On to the sound, which is what you want to know. The base of the SOFTEARS is it's tight and controlled. That's it. I mean, it doesn't go very deep, although there is some signs of that. So this is not the type of bass that you will find on a hybrid design, where with the DD will definitely go much deeper. But the bass does have a good texture, does have good details, and keeping in mind that it's a BA, it's not bad. Although sometimes, of course, it does feel like there's a little bit of depth of weight missing there. So although the bass is fast and it's well separated and it's dynamic, it lacks that extra bit of weight that sometimes is nice, or at least that I personally prefer with the music that I like to listen. It doesn't bleed into the mid, so there's there's a good separation of the bass into the mids, and the bass helps out the mids and doesn't muffle them or doesn't bring them down or anything, or cloud them or anything of the sort. Okay. As for the mids, that's where the Studio 4 strength is, much like on the Crystal 6, and also as well on the Olivetti and on the RSV. The mids here are fantastic. The mids of the Studio 4 are smooth, natural, detailed, clear. I mean, this is about being balanced, excellent execution in terms of the vocals. There's always a good sense of a good balance between intimacy, between feeling lush, the vocals, and between being detailed. The instruments are perfectly executed. They sound natural. They got just the right amount of warmth. So in terms of timbre and tonality, spot on. There's nothing to be said there. I mean, it's the amount of clarity is actually exceptional on the Studio 4s. The vocal layering, the way that the everything is not veiled, everything is as clean as can possibly be. Mids are exceptional. Period. Treble, good treble tuning. It's for the most part. Excuse me, flat. It doesn't overpower the rest. Balanced. It's got a good amount of sparkle, good amount of air, no harshness, no sibilance, nothing. It's perfectly executed again. The problem with BAs most of the times is we have to find that balance between it showcasing the BA's ability to be detailed, crisp, resolving, all of that, but not let it shine, or not let it show, the BA timbre, which can spoil things. And both the mids and the treble here have been done in a way which is exceptional, really. It's really well done. There are IEMs, BA IEMs, that will go further into that being subdued, very relaxed, and then you start having more of a feeling that you're actually listening to a really good DD, which kind of happens, for example, with the Orchestra Light, and the price you pay for that is that you then lose a little bit of detail. But then there's also the exact opposite, where you want to get all those details, you want to get all of that, but then you start having a little bit of that BA tonality and timbre, which is the case here of the Crystal 6. But I'll get into that in a second. In terms of the technicalities, staging is soundstage, is good. There's a good amount of width and height, but it lacks a little bit of depth. Imaging is fine, good separation between instruments and vocals, as I mentioned, and quite accurate. There's nothing there to be said, and that's basically it. Detailed retrieval is perfect. Timbre and tonality is spot on. So I can't really. There's really not much that I can find as a fault. If there is a fault in terms of the sound, a fault for me is that I would have liked a little bit more bass. That's all, and I think that's generally what the majority of people that have listened to the Studio 4 also say. In terms of its efficiency and how it will showcase or how it will pair better, I found that the Studio 4, although it's got a 12 ohm impedance, which can be a bit of a problem for some gear, for some DAC amps, but it's got relatively high sensitivity, so it will be relatively easy to drive. However, what I did find is that it's got the balanced tuning. It's very nice, but if you want to get a little bit extra of that warmth, then you should pair it with something which is a little bit more on the warmer side. And for example, I saw that very much when I was listening to it with the Cayenne, the Cayenne RU7. It gives me a little bit that little bit extra depth that I like. I also got that when I was using my M15 by itself. Although here it's already starting to be a little bit more clinical, a little bit more lighter. All right, with the Runabout 2 BFE and the Prime DAC combo from Venture Electronics, right on here on the right hand side. Again, we get a thinner sound. Okay, so the Studio 4 sound a little bit thinner, yeah, in the bass, but it does allow it to really showcase very well the mids and the highs. The mids and the highs are here on the VE sound tremendous. Again, not that there is much difference between here or the Cayenne or the M15, but in terms of mids and highs, the VE is the one that probably sounds the best of the three. The Cayenne is the one that has the best bass performance, or best bass synergy with the Studio 4, and the M15 is a little bit more towards the side of the VE, but not as good as the VE. Okay, and that I think basically covers the Studio 4. On to the Crystal 6. Crystal 6 BAs, all Sonian. If I'm not mistaken, I actually was able to get the models. It uses 39 AYs for the woofers, for the low frequencies. Two of them uses two 1006s for the mids and highs, and then two E50 DTs for the highs. Two of each. It's got roughly a 60 ohm impedance, and I believe, where is the box here so I don't make a mistake? The sensitivity is 114, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was. Anyway, but that's really not important. So it's got a higher impedance, so it will be easier to definitely to drive. That's the, very much a taken, given detail. However, again, very much like the Studio 4, its synergy with whatever source I was using is important. Talking about the sound first, bass. The bass on the Crystal 6, again, it's what to be expected from a BA. They're not bassy by no means, but they obviously that lack of bass in terms of weight, it compensates it with being super fast, super clean, super detailed. So the characteristics of a BA bass, it's definitely got them. Sub bass is not its forte. The Studio 4, for example, will have more sub bass. However, it does have a good mid bass punch, perhaps even in some instances a little bit more than the Studio 4. Okay. What more can I say? Yeah, that's basically it on the bass. There's really not much more I can say. Mids, this is where the Crystal 6 as well also shines. They are correct, accurate. They're not boosted in any way. They are just, they have the right amount of energy, detail, resolution to sound engaging, but not be dead or neutral or boring, if you understand what I'm saying. So compared to the mids of the Studio 4, the mids of the Studio 4 are superior. They are superior because of the timbre and the tonality, and this takes me to what I was saying earlier. The issue here with the Crystal 6 is that it it gives off more that BA timbre. All right, while here it doesn't give that BA timbre so much emphasis. It's basically non-existent. but it doesn't lose any of the details and the characteristic ability to be crispy, let's put it that way. While here you notice a little bit more of that. So it does testament to the name crystal, but you have that to take care of, or to be aware of. The upper mid range and the treble is where the Crystal 6 will be a little bit more sensitive, and depending on the tips that you use, you will notice that. If I was using the studio tips, or what is it? I forget the name now, sorry. They call it, not the studio tips, my apologies guys. So if I use the base tips, that was probably the ones that gave me the best balance. But if I used the balance tips, yes, and the crisp tips, it showcased, or it emphasized too much the upper mids and treble, and you know, it went to the point where it almost got sibilant. It didn't get sibilant, you know, but it got to a point where it almost got sibilant, and it could become while here I had no onset of fatigue, over here, because of that, they could become fatiguing after like 25, 30, 35 minutes of listening to them because of that aspect. So I ended up using the KB Hero 7s, which helped me very much control it, and you know, kind of tamed down that a little bit. And also I was getting better results if I paired it, for example, with the KN, because it's got slightly warmer sound than both the M15 and the FE, the RA2 FE and the Prime Deck, at least with my music and with and to my ears. Okay, the treble, as I sang, loads of extension. They actually claim that it can go up to 60 kilohertz. I don't hear that far, but it's got plenty of treble. Nothing to be said. So in terms of the micro details, it's phenomenal. It's micro detailing here is really good, better than on the Studio 4. So if I have to make a quick comparison here, you got better bass, better mids, better, more detailed upper mids and highs here, but at the price that after a while can become fatiguing. So be aware of that. Okay, so overall, you know, they kind of trade blows. Which would be the one that I would prefer? The Studio 4, but that's my preference. All right. In terms of the technicalities, you know, it's a mix again. The height and the depth are very good, but the width, I found it to be just a little bit. It was very much depending on what I was listening to. Okay. Layering was very good. Detail retrieval, as I mentioned, was perfect. Imaging as well, for the most part, was good. Not really a you know, a problem in any way. The takeaway thing here is that the Crystal 6 is very clear, super clear. That's the doing again justice to the name. Sorry. Doing again justice to the name, it's about clarity, and definitely it is. You know, it's an IM that if what you want is detail, definitely this is a very solid offering. Ultimately, probably even more detailed than the Studio 4, to be totally frank. Although it's like I said, it will be very much your personal preference that will decide which one is the better option. And yeah, that's basically it. That's really what I can say about these two. As for the Olivetti, well, I've reviewed Olivetti, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But again, it's a 4BA IEM using Knowles BAs, and the tuning here of the Olivetti is. It's a natural, full, balanced tuning focused on the mids. Vocals are fantastic. They've got great texture. They're not too forward, not too recessed. Bass, there's not a lot of bass quantity, but there's a lot of bass quality. It's got goes, funny enough, it actually is capable of going a little bit deeper than the crystal, but it doesn't have the same impact as the crystal. So when you listen to both, this might actually come across maybe as not being as bass capable, but no, it is slightly more bass capable than that. In terms of the mids and the highs, it's kind of an in-between of these two, the Olivetti. Once again, the Olivetti does have an issue, which is you have to be careful with what you pair it with. Okay, if you pair it with a nice with a warmer source, it will overall sound more balanced. And don't forget, when I say balanced, and when I mentioned that this is about being balanced, yes, it's a BA sound, but it's balanced for a BA sound. Personally, me, I would have liked a little bit more bass, like I said. So if you want a little extra warmth or perception of having a little bit more bass, if you pair it with a warmer source, it will be nicer. It will sound nicer. In terms of its technicalities and so on, decent enough soundstage in terms of width and height. Again, the depth, like the Studio 4, is not the best. Imaging it's fine. Detail retrieval is fine. The Olivetti, overall, what I can say about the Olivetti is that it kind of sits in between the two of these two. Okay, it's not as bright sounding, if that is the most correct way of putting it. It's not as bright sounding as the Crystal 6, and is not as nice full sounding in the bass as a Studio 4. And again, please keep in mind, when I say in full bass and so on, I'm talking about what I have here. Okay, none of them are bass monsters. All of them are focused on mids, and here it's about the biggest differences that you will find is the mids here. They sound probably the warmest, the most cozy, because of that little extra amount of bass that's there, just to give it that much. This here, it's got too much emphasis put on the upper mids and highs, which can make it sound overly clinical. This is kind of an in-between of the two. It's again, focused towards different styles of people that will like to listen to different styles of music. I'm sure if you're a big fan of female vocals and like things with a whole lot of detail, you'll probably opt for the Crystal 6. The RSV, I've got it here for the simple reason that a lot of comparisons was made between the RSV and the Studio 4, and ultimately myself, and I'm talking about myself now, I still prefer the RSV. I think the RSV, although the Studio 4 will probably give you excuse me, will probably give you I'm going to be nice now, will probably give you 95 of the experience of the RSV. When I listen to my RSV and I listen to my Studio 4, my RSV has got that little extra amount of bass that I would have liked. Okay, so it's the bassiest of all of them. By no means a bass monster. Okay, excuse me, guys. And then it's also the one that's got the nicest execution of the upper mids and the treble. Although here it's not the biggest difference. It's just in terms of timbre and tonality, the RSV has always been something that has impressed me a lot, because it sounds very much like a very well-tuned DD, like I've said before, and I even mentioned at the beginning of this review. But it doesn't lose sight of all the details that it's supposed to have as a BA set, and it just does it, in my opinion, just a little bit better than the Studio 4. Now, true, fair enough, this is $700, that's $450. Excuse me, guys, I'm really sorry for my cough. Is there enough difference here to justify the price difference? No, I'll be honest, no. But the reality is as well, this has been out for like 3 years or something. That's just been released now. The Studio 4, they learned from the RSV, so they were able to implement much of the RSV at a lower cost. So if this was launched as well 3 years ago, this probably would have been $600, So if you do find one in secondhand and in good working order and the price is good, I would probably opt for the RSV. And that's it, guys. I mean, like I said in the beginning, this is really not my intention of this here was not really to find a winner here. Was just to showcase four, but mainly three all BA sets, four BAs, six BAs, that have this tuning which is more on the neutral side, focused on the mids, detailed, with good resolve, with good resolution, and just they have slight little nuances in their tuning which then will dictate what's the best, or where they will what crowd will probably like one or the other more. All right. None of them, like I mentioned, are basey IEMs. However, having said that, I still was quite impressed with some of the results that I got, and I can give you some quick examples. Like for example, excuse me. Like for example, Loud Silence from Duke Soul, which is kind of a new age house jazz kind of music. It was actually quite surprising how well the bass was. Came through in these IEMs, especially on the Studio 4. I was actually quite impressed in terms of having more of that mid bass impact. In that I will give it to the Crystal 6 from Dusk to Dawn from George Duke. It was the one that actually was able to give those hits a little bit with more crystal clean impact, although they sounded a little bit fuller on the Studio 4. So it's very much give and take here. There's Up and Up from Jeff Ryan. The one that does it the most mellow is the Studio 4. These two are a little bit more bright in the way they do it, but ultimately the Crystal 6 then does get a little bit fatiguing after a while. In a Sentimental Mood from Cecil Norby, any one of the three does it very well, although the two that I prefer with Cecil Norby in particular is the Studio and the Olivetti. Let me see another one. High Stepping from Larry Carlton, for example. The detail of the crystal just lets it edge out slightly the other two. But like I said, guys, I mean, the differences here are minimal. Trust me, when I say the differences are minimal, they are minimal. Any one of the three is very capable. It's just now a question of you deciding which one you want. Anyway, I'll show you the graphs next, and we'll wrap it up. All right, you take care now. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the HIBY CRYSTAL6 MK2 and SOFTEARS Studio 4. Okay, let me just take away here these graphs. Okay, the first one I'm going to put up is the SOFTEARS Studio 4, well, my one at least. And as you can see, this is using the stock tip like I mentioned, and everything is like really neutral. I mean, everything sits within a window of about 9 dBs, so I can't really consider this a V-shaped. Very neutral bass, no bleed into the mids, a little bit of a sub-bass focus here. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than this. This is the RSV by comparison. And you would think that, okay, well, they're going to sound the same. But for some reason, they just don't. Somehow the RSV's bass just sounds a little bit fuller. And somehow you also get, although again, not fantastic in technicalities, the RSV never was, at least for the price. The technicalities of the RSV are about the same as the Studio 4 actually. But for some reason, this area of the upper mids treble, it just sounds a little bit more... just sounds a little bit more detailed. I can't really put my finger into it or find the proper word to explain it. Ultimately, for me personally, the RSV still comes out on top, but as I mentioned, I mean, it is a big difference in price. It's $250 and you are getting 92% of the same performance. So, you be the one that decides how you spend the money. The next one I'm going to show you is actually just the Studio 4 with the KB Eero 07 tips. Let me just take away that there. So this is the two Studio 4s, one with the OG tip and one with the KB ear tip. And the KB ear tip does help a little bit with the technicalities, I will admit. But I don't know, again, something here just doesn't it's nothing major. It just sounds, with the original tip, just sounds better. That's it. Okay. So that's that. Number 24 now. That's the HIBY CRYSTAL6, and although the graph might look, oh my god, what is going here, it's not as bad as it might seem. And what by bad, what do I mean? Well, first of all, there's not the kind of bleed that you see here. That's not what you perceive. Yes, there is more mid bass than on the Studio 4, but it's not this kind of difference here. And yes, the upper mids and the treble are significantly more energetic. That brings with it more detail, yes, better space, better overall technicalities, you could say, slightly edging out the Studio 4. But it also brings more fatigue, and it also brings more of that PA, timbre, metallic timbre. That's that. And then finally, this is the Olivetti. Let me just take away the crystal here for a second. Okay, that's the Olivetti compared to the Studio 4. The Olivetti, as you can see, very similar in the bass, although the Studio 4 does have just a little extra warmth. But in terms of the quality of the bass of the Olivetti, nothing to be said there. It's got that dip there at 5, which actually you don't notice it, first of all, and helps out with any hint of possible sibilance or thing like that. It's non-existent. And then again, excuse me, although it seems like it doesn't have much extension past 10k, there's a lot more than what you would think. And actually comparing the three of them, the RSV, the Olivetti, and the Studio 4, so RSV in black, in blue the Studio 4, and in red the Olivetti, you see very similar genetics, very similar DNA in terms of the tuning. The only one that really does stand out here, kind of in a more prominent manner, is the CRYSTAL6, the Mark II. But again, like I just mentioned, it's not what I heard was not what I see here. Yes, I did hear a more stronger mid bass, and I did hear more energy here in the upper mids and treble, but not to the point where you would think here in the graph that's, oh my god, it's a mess. And no. And that's it, guys. Anyway, as always, any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my very best to answer as quickly as possible. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.